Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. We're getting ready to start the meeting. Thank you. We will be conducting tonight's meeting here in City Council chambers as well as virtually using Zoom. Members of the public may view and listen to the meeting tonight on Wave Channel 18 and online through the city's YouTube channel. If you would like to participate in live public comment via the Zoom platform, please refer to the agenda for instructions. Mayor Pro Tem Carl Skint will begin the meeting momentarily.
I will call the meeting of the City Council, the Lincoln Redevelopment Successor Agency, and the Lincoln Public Financing Authority to order for June 25th, 2023. And I would ask the clerk to call the roll.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. It's actually April, not June. Sorry if we had the wrong date on the agenda. Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Lauritsen
I'm here.
and Mayor Pro Tem Carl Skint.
I think I'm here. Next item on the agenda is report for closed session. We have none. So there is no report.
Correct.
I would request City Attorney is Mollenkoff to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. And before we say a pledge, I just wanted to say my brother, Brian Mollenkoff, who's a deputy sheriff with San Luis Obispo County, is in Washington, D.C. tonight with the honor flight for 2023. And so he's been escorting a Vietnam veteran who was there from 1969 to 1971, who was a tunnel rat. So very exciting. Hand on your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, one nation.
The next item on the agenda is presentations. We have one presentation tonight. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers asked the City of Lincoln to host a presentation. We were more than pleased to offer our City Council meeting as the venue for this pleasant presentation. As I understand it, the presentation will provide a short history of the missile site, the remediation studies efforts undertaken so far. The briefing will also show the current schedule for remediation, study reports, and the process following the studies. This is a presentation which will allow questions pertaining to the information presented after the briefing. Answers will follow after all the questions have been asked. This is not a public hearing where we gather testimony. This is not public comment where we accept comments from the public for items not on the agenda. This is not an agenda item where we accept comments on the action being contemplated. This is not a forum or workshop where we generally elicit comments and thoughts on future actionable items. It is my understanding that the Community Committee for Site Remediation is in processing of setting up a community forum with the applicable agencies sometime in May. As soon as that is known, the city will publicize it. You are free to make your comments about the issue during the public comment portion of tonight's agenda. We will transcribe the questions as they are asked at the end of the question period. The presenters will answer them to the best of their ability. I will now turn the podium over to Tyler Stalker, Deputy Chief of Public Affairs, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
So
Okay, I'm sorry.
thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you, council members, city employees, officials, county, and also to the public. We thank you for this invitation and opportunity to present our project. Again, my name is Tim Crummett, and I represent the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. With me today is Tyler Stalker, our Deputy Chief of Public Affairs, and also Matt Marlette. Matt will be presenting tonight the technical portion of this presentation. He is an environmental engineer, bachelor's degree from UC Davis. Matt has been working in the field for 21 years. The last 5 have been with the Army Corps of Engineers. I also have a bachelor's degree from Sac State. I have a degree in geology, and I've been working in the field for 26 years. And most of it has been with formerly used defense sites, BUDS, as we'll call it tonight. I'm a new face to the project. If you've been following the project, Maria Pruitt has been the project manager. I'm the incoming project manager for the project. She's been doing a great job. She has a full plate and she will be missed. So if you look at if you can see our first photo here, we're facing south, and you can see the telltale signs of a Titan 1A missile facility. Here's your 3 missile silos. The Catholic Church is currently here. This is a construction yard for Sun City Hills that is no longer there. So that gives you the bearing of what you're looking at here. This is our former site. And if go to the next slide, please, or do I change that with this? Perfect. Here's a cutout. This is all underground of what you would see at Titan 1A. And there are the 3 missile silos you see here. This is where your intercontinental ballistic missiles, 160 feet deep underground. They'd be filled with liquid oxygen as the oxidizer for the propellant, raised above ground at a moment's notice. And also at the site, you have the control facility for the missiles itself. You have living quarters. There's antennas, a lot of wiring, air control system. Okay. Oh, look at that. Okay. Gotcha. All right. Top one, Matt, is the facility was in operation for 3 years. One interesting thing at this facility, all underground, they used 90,000 cubic yards of concrete to put that in place. Not 90,000 pounds, 90,000 cubic yards of concrete were put into the construction of this facility. A little bit of the history of the site. 1960s when they started to build it. 1962, it went into operation, and it was used as was intended for 3 years. And then in 1968, it was dismantled and salvaged. At this time, Placer County and private landowners took control and actually became property owners of the property. So fast forward to 1991. In 1991, trichloroethylene was discovered during some groundwater sampling. Trichloroethylene, also known as TCE, is a degreaser and solvent found still used to this day, found in some household projects, but its main use was for degreasing, and there is historical use at specifically at Titan 1A missile facilities. So in 1994, the Army Corps of Engineers was authorized to begin an investigation at this formerly used defense site, and it entered the FUDS world. Titan 1A is eligible for the FUDS program. There's a checklist you have to go through to get into that program. Titan 1A is in it, and it went into it. The Army Corps of Engineers is the lead agency on this project. We work closely with our lead regulatory agency, and that is the State of California Central Valley Water Control Board. And we also work with other stakeholders, other property owners. It's a team effort. A FUDS facility, a FUDS cleanup to a facility is a team effort. One big thing is a right of entry. It's not our property, and we don't step foot onto the property unless the landowner grants us that permission. And we do that through a right of entry. So there are some properties we are not currently going on because we don't have the right of entry. So in 1994, we begin the investigation of, and what we were investigating was soil vapor, and groundwater. So we're looking at those three things. From 2000 to 2004, we conducted a pilot test. That's just a scaled down study of looking at a type of remediation that may work. We extracted and treated groundwater during that pilot study over a couple years. 10 pounds of TCE was removed from the site. That equals a little over a gallon, if my math is correct on that. So 2002, we installed soil vapor, and a soil vapor extraction test was performed. This was to test out what's the permeability of the soil, what's the radius of influence of pulling vapor out of the ground. 2005, two bench scale studies were performed at this time. We're testing the chemical oxidation and also an enhanced bioremediation of TCE. That's one way it breaks down into the daughter products and goes away. So in 2009, field activities were stopped at this site. Part of being a FUDS in the FUDS program is the contamination needs to come from the Department of Defense. There was a question, is this contamination from DoD use? The site was, as that question was answered, it took a long time, and almost 10 years to answer that question. So 2018, fast forward to 2018, we reinitiate field work out at Titan 1A and jump back into the investigation activities. And so the following year, 2019, we installed 19 groundwater monitoring wells, and there's 14 out there previous to that. And then 24 new soil vapor probes, and we begin collecting all that data on a quarterly basis. So every quarter, I mean, COVID threw a little wrench into some of that. So if you look back at our reports, there are some quarters we didn't get out there due to COVID. And at this point, I'm going to pass it off to Matt. Change it with that.
Well, that's pretty cool. All right. Well, thank you, Tim. Thank you, everyone, for hearing me out. First, so what I'm going to show you on these slides is the concentrations of TCE that we found in the groundwater and in the soil gas from our recent sampling data. First, let me give you a quick little introduction or orientation to the site. About a half mile to the north is Highway 193. Coming down through the site, we have Oak Tree Lane, which terminates here at the Placer County Yard. And then you can see the missile silos that Tim mentioned earlier, the three circles. Sorry, I'm still getting used to this pointer. The three circles over here, which are the missile silos. So The TCE right now in the groundwater, the highest concentrations that we have are in this triangular parcel right here in the center of my circle. The likely origination point of TCE was a little to the northeast of that at the Placer County Yard, which is also where the Department of Defense had Quonset huts during the operation of the missile silos for their intended purpose, where they may have stored TCE. As Tim mentioned, in 2018, we only had 14 groundwater monitoring wells. In 2019 and 2020, we installed another 19 groundwater monitoring wells and the 24 soil vapor probes for us to sample. We sample them quarterly, with the exception of the one quarter that we skipped out on due to COVID lockdowns. When we sample the probes, we're sampling for volatile organic compounds, which is not just TCE. TCE is one of them. We're looking for breakdown products of TCE, so cis, 1,2-dichloroethylene and vinyl chloride, which is what TCE breaks down to in the environment. We're also looking for other fuel-related contaminants, benzene, toluene, ethyl benzene, and xylenes. For a groundwater sample, we put a submersible pump down the well, pull a sample up, pump it up, fill a bottle, send it off to the lab for analysis. For a soil vapor sample, somewhat similar, but a little more complicated. We have a vacuum pump that we are extracting the sample with, and we're filling a specialized container and sending that off to the lab. Now, when you take a groundwater sample, it's pretty obvious you're filling your bottle with groundwater. For soil vapor, not so. So the entire sample train is covered in a shroud, which we fill with helium. We're making sure that we're not finding any helium in our samples, because we want to make sure we're pulling helium-free soil vapor from below the surface. So one of the QC steps we do for that. Okay, all right, as far as the TCE concentrations go, okay, these purple rings that you see here are our TCE concentration contours. So the small little one in the center there is extraction well 1. That's our approximately 500 microgram per liter concentration. Groundwater in the area flows to the southwest, going this way. And so the TCE predominantly follows that particular path. There is some anomalies, this tight little, well, it's not, let's see. I don't know how to use the laser pointer. The tight little concentration change there to the southeast. It's just because there's a bedrock high there. We have some bedrock controlling the groundwater flow in certain areas of the site. And so when we're sampling, we're making sure that all of our analytical results are below our risk-based screening levels. Yeah. Sure, it's going to be up there. So the roads that are shown here are not actually installed right now. This is all barren field. The Crocker Knoll property and I think Century Communities, those two are what we understand of the development plans. Sun City is kind of off to the left. It's just white. It's right there to the west of the figure. So there's some residential properties right there on the west on that figure. Good enough? Okay. Thank you very much. Yep, you're welcome. So when we're sampling, we're trying to make sure that all of our analytical results are below our risk-based screening levels. And so TCE, the risk-based screening level in groundwater, is the MCL, which the maximum contaminant level is 5 micrograms per liter. So we're making sure we can delineate our groundwater concentrations to that level. That's the concentration of the last ring of that circle. That's the 5 microgram per liter contour. Similarly, with the soil gas, we're trying to make sure we're making sure we're below the risk-based screening level for soil gas, which is 16 micrograms per cubic meter. And that's the San Francisco Regional Water Quality Control Board residential vapor intrusion human health risk-based screening level. It's a mouthful. But the screening level is a concentration in the soil gas that is protective of the indoor air. So when we're looking at the data that we have, we're looking at two different things. We're looking at the concentrations that are above our risk-based screening levels, either in the groundwater on the left or the soil gas on the right. There we go. And then we're looking at a way for those concentrations to reach a receptor, or in this case, a person. And so we do have groundwater that is above the MCL, as I've mentioned before, on the 5 microgram per liter contour. But what we don't have is we don't have anyone drinking that water. The water under this at the site is not a source of drinking water. So we don't have any immediate danger to the community in that situation. On the right, we have soil gas concentrations, the purple contours again, that are above the risk-based screening levels to the east. Like I mentioned a second ago, we don't have any structures or anyone living above those particular soil gas concentrations. We do have the Sun City to the west, where there are people living. Those are the nearest residential structures. And what we have there is this green kind of crooked fence where we have our 5 closest soil vapor probes that are all below risk-based screening levels. So we don't have any imminent danger to the community. So, I'll just push forward. Okay. So we're doing this cleanup. We're doing this investigation and cleanup under CERCLA, the Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation and Liability Act, and other Department of Defense manuals and policies. Right now, we're in the remedial investigation and feasibility study. So we're looking at we've collected that, all those quarters of data that I mentioned. We're using that to write a remedial investigation report where we will look at the nature and the extent of the contamination. And then we will look at alternatives to address potential risk in the feasibility study. Out of all the alternatives we look at, we'll have a preferred alternative that we'll present in the proposed plan. And at that point, the proposed plan will have a public comment period where the public will be allowed to provide comment on the proposed alternative. We'll incorporate any of those comments into our final remedy. Will be recorded in the record of decision. We'll move on to the design and then the remedial action where we implement the remedy. It's still a little too early to say when we'll be get into the remedial action, but we are working diligently on the remedial investigation and feasibility study report right now. So pass it over to Tim then.
Not yet. Hold it, please.
Thank you, Matt. And also, if you weren't aware, the city's link, this presentation is linked if you go to tonight's meeting, so you can pull that up and look at it at your leisure. So for moving on from here, what we're going to do with engaging the public is we've mailed out 450 letters, and those were specifically asking of the possibility to form a restoration advisory board, a RAB. And we have received back numerous interest in forming a RAB. I don't want to make any promises right now about holding a RAB or having a RAB, but we are leaning in that direction, and I think we're going to strongly explore, and hopefully we will develop a RAB, but I don't want to, at this point, we're still in the development stages of the RAB. Tyler is finalizing the details for a public meeting. I believe it will be in May, and he'll get those details out probably within a week. Probably within a week of that, and that meeting will be much more. We'll have a lot more time at that meeting to answer any of the public's questions and address those. We also have a project website that is almost up. That's going to have the current status of the project. There'll be frequently asked questions that you can scroll through to find hopefully some of your answers there. And there'll also be a link to past reports for Titan 1A. So at this point, that concludes our presentation. And again, thank you for your invitation and time.
Thank you very much for the presentation. If people will that want to ask questions, raise your hand. I'll acknowledge you. Yes, sir.
Please come to
up-
the
Please
podium.
come up to the podium. This is going out over the air and we record it. So you have to speak into the mic. Thank you.
I didn't hear you mention how deep were the lowest of the silos into the ground? And also, how deep were the investigative wells?
As I said, mentioned, we're collecting the questions. They will answer them at the end of all the questions. Any other gentlemen? Oh. it's David, it's not a gentleman.
What I'd like to know is, since the first time you started testing to more current times, is there any evidence that the spread has come over closer to where we live in Sun City? And also, I'm kind of interested in how you clean this up. I have no idea how you would clean this up. I know we can wait probably 5,000 years and it'll go away. But
Thank
Thank you.
you. Ma'am?
Thank you. I have a couple of questions.
Could you,
But- My name is Ann Constantine Burge. I live in Sun City and one of the people that got this thing started with the Corps and the Water Board. I think before I say something, I want to thank all of our residents that have gotten involved both here, Zoom, and via phone over the months, the 8 months that we've been doing this, and also the council. So thank you. My questions are, over the last 15 years, that plume has grown from about 16 acres up to 29 acres. You say, or the Corps keeps saying that it hasn't, that it's been stable. We want to know how they can say it has remained stable this entire time. When will the Corps acknowledge their 2021 and 2020 quarterly reports that show the plume actually encroached on under some of the Snapdragon properties? We know that it did that on 3 different occasions. It's since backed off. When will the Corps explain why they won't immediately place barriers along the plume's border, all along Snapdragon, Prunella, Stone House, and portions of Rocky Ridge, and maybe even the north side of the slough?
Is that a question?
Yes, it is. I started out. When will they? To put these barriers in to stop the plume from going any further, to stop it from going into homes again or under homes again. They've known about it for 32 years. We need them to start now doing something to stop that plume from endangering the health and safety of our residents.
Sure.
Thank you for calling on me. My name is Art Skillman. I live in Sun City. My wife is friends with a realtor, and the realtor has told her that 3 people looking at houses that we will not live in
Excuse me,
Sun
sir.
City because of,
Sure.
the plume. Now, the question is, how is the Corps going to address the declining property values of our homes? Thank you.
You're welcome. That isn't a question for the Corps of Engineers to respond to. So I'm take that off the list. And it wasn't covered at all in the presentation. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Dee Dee Ranahan. A follow-up to that gentleman's question. A house down the street just sold 3 doors down from me, and I asked the realtor at the open house what they were going to disclose about the missile silo situation. And she acted like she'd never heard about the issue. And so follow up to that question, if the Army Corps cannot answer it, we as residents need to know if we want to put our house on the market, what do we have to disclose? What does Sun City Lincoln Hills have to disclose in the information that they present in the packet that they give to new buyers? So that's a follow-up to that. And my other question is, about 6 weeks ago, I mailed in an application, which I think is for this Restoration Advisory Board. And I know several other people on my street. I live on Periwinkle, close to Snapdragon, have sent in applications. No one has heard. Or will we be receiving an acknowledgement that you did in fact, that the Army Corps did in fact receive our applications?
Thank you.
Belle Kubo, and my question is a follow-up on hers. I was responsible for getting a lot of the information out about the advisory board. And I know that a lot of people finally did say that they were interested. I noticed on the presentation that they didn't have much interest in 19 and in 21. And I'm sure that can be explained by the fact that none of us knew what was going on. So once we did, there was real interest. You have a very large list of people that are interested. And I'm really not sure why it's going to be delayed in instituting it. We're ready to go. We've already acknowledged we're available 4 times a year. We're ready. And I think that our input is valuable.
So your question is, when will you know
And on
whether
the presentation,
an
it was very
RAB or
vague.
not? Thank you.
Yeah, it was very vague.
I have that gentleman, then you.
One question pertaining to the data map. It was up on the screen. The last testing was in third quarter of 2022. Question about that. Isn't there a more current test after we've had the large rains this year, soaking into the ground, mixing with the chemicals, moving across the plates?
Thank you. Sure.
My name is Jim Moon. I live in Sun City. Couple of items. One, funds were apparently allocated originally. I forget the date exactly, but it was around 1994 or somewhere significantly further back. Are those funds renewed every year, or was that a one-time allocation? If it was a one-time allocation, are they in 1994 dollars, or have they been escalated to cover inflation? Next question is, it would appear that because the data changes over time, that any data is what I would call perishable. It's only valid at the time that you take it, or for some period of time afterward. Having seen the dates on the slides that go through 2026 to finish investigations and do planning and all of those things, with a remediation date that was shown as TBD, and we're already approaching the 30th anniversary of the discovery of the chemicals, what would lead me to believe that the data that you collect now is going not to still be valid on or before the time you begin the remediation? Or that by then the chemicals may not have migrated further and be causing hazard because that data is perishable? How do you address that?
My name is Susan Silver. I live at Sun City, Lincoln, and I am a real estate broker. So I wanted to know when you would be able to have some information pertaining to the fume and how it is affecting the homes in Sun City, Lincoln, because there have been reported many properties where people are afraid to live in Sun City now. And I just wanted to address to you that a lot of people here have said, why don't we know about the Titan missile? And that's because Placer County, my understanding, does not require that it is disclosed. But my real question is, can you give us a timeline on when we could maybe make everybody feel a little better? Thank you.
My name is Amin Al Mouti. I'm Sun City also. In the last presentation at Sun City, there was mentioned that there is no nuclear contamination at the site. Is that for sure, considering that the Titans, once they are fired, which they weren't, they are supposed to carry a nuclear missile head with them. So there was no material stored on the site or prepared there in case there is a need for it. Can that be confirmed?
Mayor Pro Tem, we do have a couple of people on Zoom as well.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Steve Sterling and I'm a resident in Sun City. One of my concerns is with as the other gentleman mentioned, the increase in the rainfall would undoubtedly increase the groundwater levels, a rise in that, which would increase the groundwater velocity to the southwest. So the stability of the plume itself in groundwater is of question because of the recent rainfall increase. One of your investigation reports documented that it was about 11 feet per year. That may have increased dramatically as a result of this wet seasonal rainfall. Also, a question I have was the 2022 QAP used in all of the work post the 2018, and will that be used as a work plan for future work until the proposed additional work that's going to occur in 2024? And a big question I have is source removal of the contamination. We have seen the success of groundwater extraction and removal for the TCE, 10 pounds in just 1 year's time, I believe. It'd be critical to continue that even as a pilot study to help reduce the source. Source is reduced, and that's going to affect the plume overall and the soil vapor that's being contaminated from groundwater.
Thank you. Yes?
Jim Moon again. One final follow-up question. How does the cost of the studies to date and the cost of the studies planned compare as a percentage of the remediation cost? Are we spending more money on studies and planning than it's going to cost to actually do the work?
Thank you. Okay,
So we have a
Question,
couple
please.
more.
get those two.
Thank you. My name is Ray Burge, Sun City. Just have one question for the Corps. Are they going to implement some sort of a temporary barrier now to stop this thing before it gets any worse? Are there any plans to do that? And if not, why not?
That was redundant with one other question. I'll make sure it gets covered.
Oh, thank you.
My name is Vernon Dexter. I'm a Sun City resident. I'm also a retired master chief, and I dealt with hazardous waste. My question is, I know there's many missile sites around our country. What is a priority of cleanup of our site versus other sites? The second question is, what is our representative, Kyle, doing to pursue cleanup? Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Pete DiGiordano. I've lived here since 1956, and I remember when the Titans was a car club. Anyway, what I want to know is what effect does that have on humans, the chemical that you're talking about? Nobody's asked that question. I'd like to know that. Thank you.
That's an excellent
The
point.
last question from men.
That was an excellent point.
Yeah.
It was mentioned that it's no worse than a household chemical. But my concern is That's a flyway, a natural flyway for all the geese. How does it affect the wildlife in the area that bed down there? Okay, that's a question.
Impact on the environment.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem, we have John Roten. Please go ahead. John, please unmute yourself. There you
Hi.
go.
Hello, my name's John Roten. I'm a resident of Esplanade at Turkey Creek, which is immediately, I believe, east of the site across McBean Parkway at Oak. And I don't believe any of our residents have been notified of this while we are within 0.6 of a mile of the site. My two questions are, first, can the Army Corps of Engineers guarantee that there is no plume or migration of the chemicals in the direction of our community east of the site, as there's a new elementary school being planned and built immediately adjacent to it on this side, plus all of our homes, for all the same reasons stated by the Sun City residents? My second question would be, would it be possible for our homeowners to be notified of future meetings as part of the normal outreach on this to be included? Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have John Griffin. Please go ahead. John, please unmute yourself.
John Griffin, Sun City. So there were some earlier studies that showed contamination under the church property. And I'm interested in the North Snapdragon area of Sun City and whether or not we know for sure whether there's been migration of the TCE under the church property and maybe coming into the Snapdragon area on the.
Sorry about that. I muted you. Do you have anything else to say? Okay, we'll go on to Gregory. Gregory Williams, please unmute yourself. Gregory, are you unable to mute yourself? Please unmute. There you go. Go ahead, Gregory. He's unmuted, so he must be having some technical problems. We'll go on to Laura Bishop. Laura, please unmute yourself.
Hi, Laura Bishop, resident of Sun City. And I had a question regarding, I think you said you sent out 450 letters. Well, two questions. One, how is it determined who got those letters? Are they in a closer radius to problems coming? And two, why not notify everybody in Sun City? Thank you.
Thank you.
Gregory, if you're, please unmute yourself, Gregory. Those are all the hands we have raised.
One question, two questions here.
My name's Stan Eberhardt. I'm in Sun City on Snapdragon. The schedule they just put up there, which goes out 5 years to maybe infinity, is really generic. I know the Corps of Engineers is a detailed engineering firm. And if they don't have a responsibility matrix saying who's responsible for what, in other words, you're going to be done in 6 months, and then you got to be done in 6 months, and then so why does it take 5 years to go from studying, which they've already been doing for 3 or 4, to maybe we'll start in 5 years from now?
Thank you.
I have a follow-up. I'm Michelle Kubo. I live here as well. I have a follow-up to the question about how they prioritize. They've known about this for 32 years. It's been approved. This community, I don't know how it compares to the other sites around the country. I think there were 53 or something, but this community is a high-risk community. It's an older population, and now I hear we've got an elementary school that's going to be in there. So it is a riskier population, and I'm wondering whether those factors are weighed in to the decision about where they're going to spend the money.
What was, could you repeat the question, the part of the question?
Another resident commented on how they determine which site gets money.
Oh.
And my question, follow-up to that is there any weight given to the risks to the population?
Thank you. One more online? No, okay. Yes, please.
Ann Constantine Burge again. Thank you. I think all of us kind of missed at the beginning when the Corps might get back with us with the answers to these questions. So my question is,
Tonight,
they're going to get back with us tonight on it.
Yeah.
Cool.
yes.
Dee Dee Ranahan. I would like to know, as that other woman just mentioned, I believe there were 53 or 54 other sites throughout the country at the same time that this site was established, and I believe they were all shut down about the same time. What does the Army Corps have as far as history of those other sites? What's happening at the other sites? What's been learned from the other sites? And what other remedial actions, if any, have been taken at those other sites, have been effective, and are we going to be able to use that information?
Okay.
Good evening. Tom Brudding, also from Sun City. I would like to know if the Corps is aware that construction is about to begin on the site imminently and what they'll do in coordination with the remediation.
Thank you. Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem Gregory has his hand. I'll give him one last chance to unmute himself. Gregory, please unmute yourself. So you are unmuted. You must be having technical difficulties on your end. We're not hearing you. I'm sorry.
Okay. It looks like it's time to answer some questions. Thank you all for the decorum you've shown in asking and minimizing the redundancy. Okay, the questions are, and I don't know who to direct them to, so it's a toss-up. You guys fight. First question, how deep were the silos and how deep are the wells that you're monitoring?
Before Matt starts, I do want to say thank you all for the questions and the comments. We will not be able to answer all of them tonight.
I have an answer, which is you can't answer.
Correct. But yes, we will address all of them, and we will address all of them between now and probably when we have that public meeting that we're scheduling for May. But I will pass this one back over to Matt for the first question for what he knows about the sites.
I can't recall how deep the silos are. It's published in our documents somewhere, and the answer is readily available, but it's not right here, right now. So I can't answer that one. As for the wells, oh, go ahead. They're quite deep, yeah.
A little deeper than 160. Okay. And the missile itself was 160 feet tall, so. The exact depth of it.
Next question. Since the beginning of testing, is there any evidence of movement or spread? And how do you clean it up? Two questions there.
Okay. Well, there was one question before that I wrote down, which is how deep are the wells? And I'm going to say about 30 feet deep. And they all vary. There's different levels to we installed them, but they're roughly 30 feet deep. All that data is published in, and construction details on all the wells is published in the quarterly groundwater monitoring reports. So that's the answer to that. So to look at the data, there's a couple different things to consider. Is that we had a fair amount of investigation, as Tim mentioned, between 1991 and 2006. And so we had a number of wells that were present for that. Some of those got abandoned, and then we put in new wells, like we mentioned, in 2019 and 20. So we kind of had different wells looking at the groundwater concentrations. They weren't installed in the same spots. We're not quite comparing apples to apples when we look at the two different data sets. But we do see that extraction well one's consistently been the high detection of TCE in the groundwater. And there has been some new detections to the south, closer to the nature preserve, if you will, MW19. So there has been some evidence of an increase there. MW19, I think, is still below our risk-based screening levels, I think, in most of our sampling, if not all. And yeah, I guess that's kind of what I was going to say about that. So, and then we can answer more and have more graphics prepared to that question in May.
Over the last 15 years, the plume has grown from 15 to 29 acres. Is that valid? I'm paraphrasing rather than arguing.
Well, that goes back to what I was saying earlier about not quite comparing the same data sets from before and after. So I do not have a current calculation on the acreage that you could say is above the MCL. Well, what do you?
I've lost my questions. Excuse me a minute. Here we go.
It's a difficult question to answer because I don't know that we had the monitoring wells as far west during the early 2000s as we do now. So we may just be getting a different data. We may be getting different data to answer to draw our contaminant plumes. So the groundwater is headed southwest, and it would follow the path of the groundwater. So when we were in the early 2000s, we did not have TCE in MW19, and there are low-level detections in MW19 now. MW19 is the one that's right there between the property boundary and the nature preserve boundary.
So if I can ask you to speak into the
Oh, I'm
microphone,
sorry,
because we
yeah.
have a number of people on Zoom that can't hear.
First time
Thank
I hear it, sorry.
The next question, what do you have to disclose if you sell your property? And I don't know whether that's in your wheelhouse at all.
It is, that's not our authority. That's,
I do know that there has been disclaimers in deeds, in purchases in Lincoln Hills, for parts of Lincoln Hills since day one on this exact issue.
You can answer that question. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. The problem with this is that people have asked a lot of questions and we're trying to get to them in sequential order. And so to the extent that that the Mayor Pro Tem has time thereafter, you can entertain that, but I think you need to try to get through them before we don't get to the others.
Okay, ma'am. We have you can make your statements in the public comment section later in the thing. We're answering questions that have already been asked. and trying to get through them all so that everybody is either upset or satisfied.
I mean, I could answer a little further with, I say it's not our authority as the federal government to dictate what goes into a real estate transfer agreement. But I have been told by the state of California that if you are on a FUD site, that is to be in those transfer papers. But that, I've been told that.
Will we receive an acknowledgement for people that send in the thing to the RAD? Will they receive an acknowledgement?
Not, we won't send them specifically, yes, we received your acknowledgement. We are responding to those, and like I said in my presentation, right now we're leaning into developing a RAB, and we'll have more information on that at our public meeting.
And
To add on to that real quickly, that decision has to be approved by the commander of the Sacramento District Army Corps of Engineers. So there is a process to review and assess the responses that we've received, and we're still working through that process now.
the next question was why the board is delayed. You just answered that. Last testing was in 22, third quarter 22. Has there been, when is most recent testing? Is that the most?
Right. No, that's the most recent testing available to the public right now. We sampled again in December 2022, and I believe it was February 2023. So we do have that data. We have the analytical results. We have a whole, chemistry database that we keep it, we receive it in. We're reviewing right now the fourth quarter 2022 data, and we will send that to the water board when we're ready for, when we've reviewed the report and approved it, and it'll be made public again. And the same thing for the first quarter 2023. So we do have data following the atmospheric river.
Are funds renewed every year, or was it a one-time? And how do you know that
Yes, the funds are renewed every year. We put in a work plan that goes to Congress. It's part of the congressional budget that FUDS is awarded, and that's on an annual basis.
This is a data question. How do you know the data will still be valid 15 years from now?
Yeah, well, so I wrote down that, there was a concern about the data being perishable, and, to some extent, there is a concern about that. That's why we didn't just take all the data we had from 2000 and 2001 and 2006 and just pick right up again and do it. We wanted to set out, we did our work plan, the CLAP, and we collected more data about the TCE concentrations. And we're doing our remedial investigation based on that new data. But not all the data that we've collected is perishable. We've got, information about bedrock. We've got information about, soil permeability, lots of other data that is not perishable. Geology doesn't move on the same time frame. So to some extent, yes, to some extent, no. And we'll continue to look at the site and monitor.
When will you have information about how the plume will affect existing homes? And when can we feel better? The question is a determination, I think, of the effect on existing homes. When will that be put to bed?
I guess I'm having trouble picking the exact question out of there.
Yeah, well, I don't know. What we can say is, when we say the plume is stable, it doesn't mean it has not moved at all. There is ebb and flow with groundwater, and the plume does not move at the same rate groundwater moves. There is a toe to that plume that can vary back and forth. So when we say stable, there is some movement in that plume. But what we can say is right now there is no hazard that we know of between that plume and the houses there, where the trench with the soil vapor sampling is, you know, I can confidently say, yeah, there's no hazard right now associated with those houses regarding our plume. So I think that's what the question's getting at.
The other questions centered around the extreme water flows that we've had this year. And has the plume increased because of the wet season and the increase in groundwater?
Yeah, Matt hit that. I mean, we can hit it again.
Yeah, I mean, we have we did monitoring before and after the atmospheric river or whatever you want to call it. So we do have that data and we will publish it in time.
Does the cost of the studies to date and the cost of future studies cost more than the actual remediation?
I can't, I don't know how much the future, studies will cost, so but there are, I mean, there's a definite process we have to follow, and there's many players involved with how that money will be spent and when it's spent and what it's spent on. It's not, we don't just make that decision.
Will you implement a temporary barrier, a temporary remediation?
We're still studying right now to understand the problem more and what our remediation will take place. But as of right now, with no hazard, we can't justify spending funds on something where it's not needed.
What is the priority of our site versus other sites? And this person asked for all other sites. Another person asked specifically against the other Titan one.
Sure. Part of that work plan submittal to our headquarters and eventually to Congress is there is a hazardous ranking in there. And so that ours, I mean, I can't tell you a number but it is looked at, and I don't know. That's the best I can answer that question with. And specifically for other Titan 1A sites, I don't know any similar to compare it to. I'm not saying they're not out there. It's a good question. We could perhaps ask on a bigger level.
And later on, the other question was asked as part of the evaluation. Like you said, the significant threat is one of the evaluation criteria, is the health of the demographic of the potential target. Is that taken? In other words, people from retired communities that have anti-immune system problem.
Yeah, I mean, we have a toxicologist on our team. He's promised me he's going to be at the public meeting and I'll leave it at that.
Well, I'll add in a couple of things here. When we're talking about FUD sites, we're talking about 10,000 across the nation. There are a lot of FUDs projects. Many of them are eligible to be in the FUDs program. So we're competing with a number of projects that go beyond just Titan 1 projects. And our data, as Matt indicated, shows to us that there is no imminent danger to human health. So I would imagine that plays very little role in that ranking, because at this site, there is little risk.
I don't want to speak for the FUDs program, but I know in the Sacramento FUDs program, this is one of the priority sites for Sacramento Army Corps in their FUDs portfolio. So
Absolutely, yeah. This is high on the radar in our in our projects right now.
What is the specific effects or hazards to humans from TCE?
TCE is, has both carcinogenic and non-carcinogenic effects, and I think that's probably a better question left to our risk assessor, who we will bring with us in May. So, yeah.
Likewise, you'll have an environmentalist answer what is the effect on the natural environment? Birds and
Well, we will, we have a team, like Tim mentioned, of many professionals. We also have an eco risk specialist on that team reviewing our documents. So it won't be like not addressed or thought about. It'll be considered in our remedial investigation.
Is there any guarantee that there's no migration to Turkey Creek states?
What was the name of the creek?
Esplanade, Turkey Creek. They're on the other side of 193 from Lincoln Hills.
Well, I'm never gonna say never, but I will say we did a lot of investigation around the site. More so than you saw in our figures. We sampled by the silos, we've sampled by the seal chambers, we've done a bunch of investigation around the missile silos themselves. And the TC we found is what we're following now, we're monitoring and tracking. So we haven't found evidence of TCE around the silos to the north or the east. We still have a couple of monitoring wells over there that we have monitored, but we just didn't, the TCE we found has been to the southern side of the site.
And the other question is, could you, the statement was that they were within the circle.
This is about.
Can you notify them of future meetings?
Yes, we can expand that notification. For the RAB, I can tell you, we sent letters to residents, property owners within 1/3 of a mile. So they're 0.6, they would be beyond that, but we can include them in all future communications.
And in partial answer to that question, the big forum meetings will be advertised across all media up here. So you don't have to rely on getting a letter.
Correct. As soon as we finalize those meetings, we'll make sure they're shared widely.
Was there migration of TCE under the church or onto North Snapdragon?
We had a couple of monitoring wells on the church parcel in the early 2000s. And there was, I believe, some low-level detections of TCE, hovering around the risk-based screening level, the 5 micrograms per liter that I mentioned before. We do not have any wells or soil gas probes on that property now. And I think there was a question earlier about our 2020 QAP. We had kind of planned to put 1 there or 2 there, and we just didn't get the right of entry like Tim had mentioned. So anyway, we haven't done any investigation on the church parcel.
Why is your schedule so long?
Why is the schedule so long? Well, I mean, it's really, this is something that Maria Pruitt, the former project manager, said. And I liked it, so I'm going to steal it. It's really easy to make lemonade, but it's hard to pull the lemon juice and the sugar and the water back out. And that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to clean up. Like Tim said, we did a pilot study. We pulled out 10 pounds of TCE. That's like a gallon, and it's a gallon and a half maybe. And in by some calculations in our earlier remedial investigations, the massive TCE that may cause this plume, we're talking 20 pounds. And you see how big it is aerially. So we're trying to get a little bit of TCE that's over a large area, and we're trying to do that. And it's complicated. We've got a bunch of scientists and engineers working on the problem, and you know, it's a challenging problem to face. So that's why. Anything you want to add?
One of the reasons too, we want to make sure we make the right decision. And part of that is gathering data. Gathering data takes time, and many times it takes years and years. Because if you make the decision too fast, it actually will prolong the issue. Then you put in a treatment system that didn't really work, and that's 10 years down the line, and jump to another, you know, so that's part of the slowness. And we are the US government, unfortunately, where there is process involved. Everything is about the process, and it takes time.
What are the history? Do you have any knowledge of other Titan 1A sites and that have been remediated, and what techniques?
Yeah, one of our documents, even before, I mean, to start off, it's called the Common Operations Report, and the Army, the Department of Defense puts those out, and there are specific common operation reports for Titan 1A missile facilities. And we look, and that's part of the reason, well, oh yeah, they most likely use TCE there. And that's part of, we incorporate that into what we look for, how we look for it, and where we expect to find it. Because yes, they're kind of cookie cutter sites, so to speak.
Yeah. Go about that. So it's a Titan 1 site. This site was one of three, all tied to Beale Air Force Base. There's a 1B and a 1C. So it's just a Titan 1 site, just for clarity. But what I wanted to jump in here and say was that you know, the missile silo operated from 62 to 65, and it was obsolete, and then they decommissioned it, got rid of it, all that stuff Tim mentioned earlier. So it became eligible as a FUD site. And there's a lot of those Titan 1 sites that were eligible as a FUD site. And the FUDS program itself has a repository of all of our FUD sites throughout the nation. So we have data from all the other FUD sites. If they're working a cleanup, you know, we have that data. And we have a team of experts in our Omaha office that kind of provide a sanity check on what we're doing at the district level. And so they've seen all these other Titan sites from around the nation. They go, oh, this one here, you know, this does or doesn't work. So that we're making sure we are following our process to get input from, you know, our experts who have seen other Titan sites outside of the Sacramento district.
Okay, and the last question I have here is, is the Corps aware the construction is about to begin in the area of the site?
Yes. So we are aware. I mean, I guess we've been hearing that since we started. We started in 2018, but we are aware that it's imminent for, I think it's called the Century Community Property, the one onto the east there. The water board is also aware. I know the water board has reviewed the trench dewatering plan, because one of the plans is to realign utilities along Oak Tree Lane. So the water board has made comments on that to you know, not spread our contamination any. And then the water board during 5, 6, 7 years ago. I don't want to say a date because I might be wrong, but they did put a restrictive covenant on the buildings there for the recreational parcel and the residential houses. So they are required to put I think the recreational parcel is closer to our plume. I think they are required to have passive subslab venting system and a vapor barrier. And the residential properties are required to have a vapor barrier. That's not something we've done. We're just aware of it. It's available on GeoTracker. So the water board has put some measures out there with respect to our contamination and the construction.
Okay. Well, I personally, and I think the rest of the council I can speak for, am very happy with the fact that you chose to come and give us a slight look under the kimono and our establishing outreach for the community. The next episode of that will be the forum in May. That includes, I think, all of the agencies involved, not just the Corps of Engineers. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having us. And yes, that meeting will include hopefully all of our partner agencies as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
The next item on the agenda next item on the agenda is public comment. Yeah.
This was agenda.
Yeah. Please, you want to, should we take a 5-minute break?
I just want to make a comment. And I am a real estate broker, and Placer County does not require an environmental report. It is available for all agents to get. There are 3 parts of the report, and the environmental part of that is not required by Placer County. So that's why the real estate agents may not be giving it to you, but it is available for you.
Any other public comment on items not on the agenda? On the rest of the agenda?
Cards up there, the blue cards.
Oh,
Good parts over here too.
oh,
Public comment on the Titan issue?
No, this is public comment.
So we can't make public comment on what we just heard?
You may, this is public
Yes, you
comment
may.
for items not on the agenda. The council is not going to be taking any action on the Titan missile site tonight, so it is not considered part of the agenda. So if you would like to make public comment, now would be the time.
Well, now I'm totally confused because this is a comment on what we just heard.
okay.
As
Let
far,
me, let me explain so that people aren't confused, or I'm not confused. The last thing was a presentation. Presentation has questions and answers.
Right.
They don't really have comments.
okay, so if I have
But if
something,
you have your own comments, theories, or whatever, this is the time to do it. As long as it's not something that we're going to act on, we aren't going to act on.
okay, this is just my take on the comment that was made about this possibly being seen as low risk on somebody's measure of risks. But the genie's out of the bottle here. And so it's not just a matter of the missile silo and the contamination issues. There are psychological risks now that are floating through the community. There's concerns about property values, and there are financial risks. And one of the reasons I wanted to be on the committee that I hope gets established, I'm a typical Sun City resident. The bulk of my financial wealth is in my house. And the plan is, my plan was, if when the time comes that I need to move into assisted living, I would sell my valuable house in Sun City, Lincoln City, and Sun City, Lincoln Hills. And that is how I would finance my assisted living and not be a burden to my children. There are many people in this situation that have the same kind of plan. So now that plan is kind of being big question mark put above it, because what do I have to disclose going forward? As someone else mentioned, are people going to become afraid of moving into this community with this cloud hanging over its head. How are you going to manage these risks, these psychological risks? How are you going to manage how the media treats this? If the media gets a hold of it, it could be all over the place, and then that impacts our property values. So I hope the Army Corps is taking all these other kinds of risks into consideration. Thank you.
First, what's your name, sir?
Sandy.
Excuse me.
Supposed to call the cards.
I want to go through the cards first, right?
This is not my time to talk, then I'll just wait. I didn't know if the.
Just wait. Just wait.
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 Just wait. You're gonna go through the cards first? All right.
Which-
Yeah, you're just
which
gonna go
people
through
already
the cards of
signed
people
up.
that have submitted things, and then we'll ask for additional.
Ann Constantine Burge.
Have to send a letter?
No, you.
First, I want to say thank you to Christine and her son for him being on the honor flight. My twin brother was on an honor flight for a Vietnam veteran also, and that's part of why I'm here tonight, to say thank you. What many of y'all don't know about me is I write a lot. Sean can tell you that. I prefer to write about World War II, especially air crews and their aircraft. What got me interested in World War II was wanting to know about Pearl Harbor and December 7th, 1941. The USS Arizona is the most famous ship destroyed. It's a memorial to this 1,177 men who died aboard her. As of Friday, April 21st, 2023, in Provo, Utah, an Arizona survivor, Howard Kenneth Ken Potts, died 6 days after his 102nd birthday. His friend Lou Conter is 101, and Lou is the last survivor of the USS Arizona. And when he's gone, there will be no more Arizona survivors to carry on the story. So I hope you all will tell people about it and honor our veterans and people like her son honors. So thank you.
Don Veltri. Oh, yeah. Our bi-weekly update.
And that's why I'm here. Thank you for this time. First, I just wanted to do, as you had shared, the bi-week, right, twice a month update. I just wanted to share positive news because there's a lot of emotion in this room right now. Positive news is I had met with our city attorney in October, and she came to me and suggested to me to have some council members and city representatives come to my HOA meeting, or our HOA meeting that I have. I'm the president of the HOA at the Ravine area on Gateway Drive. It's called Lincoln Gateway. And I was overwhelmed with gratitude. Ms. Melankoff had 8 people there. The city manager, the chief of police, the homeless task force, Mana, the Corporal Pollard, Kimberly McHugh, Aaron Johnson, and Keith Johnson. I felt validated. I felt heard. In the meantime, the answers were given to questions that were clear, informative, compassionate for where we live and the issues that we have. And I want to say thank you. I'm now proud that I am a member of Lincoln for the representation that was given to me and to our HOA, our residents. And I feel that there is an open communication and a true caring within the city. So thank you.
Thank you. Mike Garabedian. Oh, I didn't see you back there.
Hi, I'm Mike Garabedian, Placer County Tomorrow and Heel Lincoln. I'm here to talk about this Thursday, the meeting of the Central Valley Regional Water Quality Control Board, where Lincoln has asked for that board to declare that the Auburn Ravine is no longer suitable for spawning below where the city charges into it. Now, Pedretti, Public Works Director John Pedri, he was responsible for this city requesting those temperature limits that are put on the permit. And now it's different. Now the city is asking to change those temperature permits and to declare, which they can't do because there's a state basin plan that makes the whole valley and it makes this area, it names it as suitable for spawning. So they can't really do properly what the city's asking them to do. So, what this means, this is something that will affect cold water fish, salmon and steelhead and others. And what you should really do is withdraw this application before the regional board. It's a mistake for them, and you need to correct it. And this is a National Pollution Limitation Permit. It's a Clean Water Act permit. And you can't reduce a permit requirement in this way. It's called backsliding under the Clean Water Act. You can't do what you're asking to do. Now there's an interesting question. What is causing the temperature change? Now I have toured the plant with Ecologic when it was running the plant. It's no longer running it. I toured it with the gentleman who was running that. It may be that because the intake and out, the temperature measurement up and downstream are too close. But what it really means is that these different readings back in 2014 and 2020, the most recent readings several years ago did not show that the water met temperature requirements. And now it's not. It's entirely possible that what's causing those measurements now is a problem with improper sampling problem. It may mean that all of the readings are incorrect because they're being found now and being used as this proposed excuse to say we no longer will have there no longer could be any spawning below where your intake is. Now, this is what they said about Natomas, that it was, of course, what they didn't change the rule. They didn't try to change the rule. They did put gravel in the river there and did lots of things to bring spawning back. So so there are storage capacity issues. Now, the storage capacity was fine. And when I toured the whole facility, it's one of the more, I've toured sewer plants and 3 of them in New York City for other under the Clean Water Act Industrial Pretreatment Program. And it's really hard to figure out why that facility isn't adequate or can't be corrected to address the problem.
Please wrap up.
Thank you.
All those.
All those, most of that went over my head. I don't know. This whole evening has been a complicated thing, and I have some very simple solutions to 2 problems that are on my mind. One of them is the creek, basically. The creek, now that the disc park is no longer a viable option at that location, I happen to live by Foskett, and the school there has a preserved area, and the signs very clearly state it's a preserve, do not trespass. And I would like to see some consistency in the signage that's in our city, so that if it's a park and you're allowed to go on the grass, that's one thing. But right now, the Lincoln the Auburn Ravine Dog Park does not have any consistency as far as the entrances where it says, please do not go onto the sensitive areas. A sign was recently put up. It does not say anything about the code, the penal code that allows the city to enforce it. It just says, watch out for rattlesnakes and please don't step on the grass, which is not what, it's not a consistent message. I'm looking for consistency. The other aspect is the creek. I do their cleanup of the creek every Wednesday with the Adopt a Creek program. And once again, last week, we pulled another bicycle out of the creek, a full bicycle, and numerous other parts, handlebars, tires, everything. that comes from one person in particular at a one place right across from the post office. We call it the bicycle pit. And there's got to be some consistency in the message that we give to the homeless that no, they can't just keep doing what they're doing. And once again, now you just say you don't have the money or the solution, but somebody's got to go out and buy their kid a new bicycle now. And this happens all the time. It's one area where that bicycle is, we know who it is, and something should be done consistently, just like all of the areas last year when they said you will have a 10 by 10 area for your tent. You walk through there now and they have mega mansions set up, tops all over the place. And there's just more and more junk. There's no consistency of enforcement. And once you make a rule saying it's a 10 by 10, it should be enforced. We're asking for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The staff is already concentrating on that area where he's talking about as far as where the bicycles are, right?
We are, and we have a program that we're working to finalize that will be coming to council once some of our community partners can do their outreach that they need to do. I would estimate within probably 3 months. In the meantime, our probation department is going to be stepping up its efforts in the ravine. And so I think in the next couple of weeks, you'll see some pretty significant changes down there. And then in addition, I've circulated to staff a revised draft of our camping ordinance that will also more directly address campfires and those types of things in the ravine. So that will be coming before you in the next month or so.
Thank you very much. Next person, Jonathan Souza.
The meeting room is pretty empty right now, but obviously there was a lot of concerned Sun City, Lincoln Hills residences here. And one of the things that keeps coming up is they're worried about their property values with this Titan missile site, okay? There is evidence of people pulling out of deals, okay? It's known fact now that Placer County doesn't require the real estate board to issue the complete environmental report. They let us know that we're within so many feet of a missile site, abandoned, end of story. But if you pay an extra $49, you get the second section of the report, and it states that you're within 0.2 miles of an environmentally contaminated area, and they even mention the chemical. So that's why everybody in Sun City, Lincoln Hills isn't aware of the fact that they're living on contaminated, within the reach of contaminated soil. This is controlled by Congress. A few years back, a congressman tried to pass the bill and make it straight across the board that when you do these environmental reports to help to protect the people that are affected when they make a purchase, but it failed Congress. But it is the Placer County that dictates to the real estate board up here. Santa Clara County, they require it. Here they don't. So maybe there could be somebody from the county, like I'd be interested in talking to the county assessor's office. Because obviously we got homes there that aren't worth what homes on the other side of, even though the homes are similar. They're not the same value. So I'd like to see my property tax bill reduced. Until we get this contamination cleaned up, we're at a loss. So I just want to bring that up. I don't know if there's anybody here from the county. And maybe the city could help organize that and let the proper people know. I hear the water board's going to be at the next one. Excellent. And that's it. Thank you.
Pete. You,
Mine's pretty petty. My wife and I went out to breakfast on a Sunday about a month ago, and when I got after breakfast, we decided to go for a ride. So we drove up 12 Ridges. When I got to the top where that gated community is, the gate for the gated community is, there's a stop sign there. I stopped at the stop sign. My wife said, "Good thing you stopped. There's a police officer parked right there." The police officer was actually here, but he left. Anyway, I come to a complete stop and I proceeded through. He pulled up behind me, gave me a ticket. I took it to court. The judge told me that the officer was more credible than I am, and found me guilty. I went and took a lie detector test because I thought we were innocent until proven guilty. Now, this police officer, not only, when he went to court, not only did he say I ran the stop sign, which I didn't, but he put pedestrians in a crosswalk and another vehicle there, which wasn't there. So I'm just asking, to what standard do you hold your police officers?
that's your question.
Yeah, is there a standard? I mean, can a police officer actually just lie and do whatever he wants? And, you know, as a citizen, now I used to be the third largest tax provider for Lincoln until I moved my business. And my business has quadrupled since then. And I've lived here since 1956. I was instrumental in recalling the whole city council back when they raised the water and sewer rate every other month to balance their budget. We got rid of all of those guys and we kept one guy, Larry Costa. Then there was a gas station.
I'll have the city manager try to answer your question.
Yeah, so unequivocally, we hold our police officers to the highest standard. What I would tell you is that if you have a complaint about a specific officer's conduct, there's a very specific process that exists in California for filing that complaint and then associated follow-up. The chief can probably advise, or you could call the police department and there's a form that you could submit and they'll look into whatever the complaint may be. It's not something that is appropriate, nor would we discuss a personnel matter in open public.
Okay, that's fine, except that I went to the police department and I filled out that form and just said a ticket. They didn't care about it. Secondly, it's not about the ticket. It takes me about 4 minutes to come up with $233, okay? I didn't take my time out of my day to go down there because of that ticket. I went down there because this police officer took it upon himself to have fun with me that day. Now, I can afford that ticket, but there might be a lot of people here that are on a fixed income and can't. And if we keep people like that working at the city, then guess what? I don't think that it's more than the ticket. It's the fact that he lied under oath. I went and took a lie detector test. My wife said she'll take a lie detector test. And I just want to know, the police department is doing what the police department does. Nothing. I've got the form right here. They did nothing. Secondly, there was a murder at McDonald's. The investigation on that, is that public knowledge, or do I have access to that? Because Friday,
Excuse me.
I'm hiring a private detective to
Your-
look into this matter.
Your time is up.
Okay. Friday, we'll open this up. I'll get attorneys, I'll get whatever. I want. That's how you get yours.
Michelle Kubo.
So this question occurred to me, we've had discussions about it a long time, and the man that was talking about the homeless encampment. I had been under the impression that the laws of the state applied. And I was surprised to find that apparently some sort of declaration was made that if homeless were on public land, it was okay. Is that a true statement? Because vagrancy, drugs, the myriad of things that are going on seem to me like we've got laws on the books that say that's not okay, but for some reason we can't enforce them. Am I right about that?
I'll let,
I could give a 4-hour lecture
right,
on this topic.
cut it down.
So just to be real clear, yes, there are laws on the books, but those laws have been interpreted by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals well as the state Supreme Court, and we are subject to those interpretations of the law. And so it's not as simple as saying we have a vagrancy law on the books and so lock them up. And unfortunately, I guess from your perspective, we're not going to arrest ourselves out of the homeless problem. And so our task force is working on a salad sandwich, many options that are going to address different components of the homeless problem, because it is a many faceted problem, a lot of mental health issues, a lot of drug and alcohol controlled issues. There are individuals that are living in the Auburn Ravine that have been living there for over 20 years. And so it's not just as simple as saying, we're going to go out in there and clear them out and put them in jail. So we are working very diligently. And as I indicated earlier, you're going to see a number of programs and projects that we have been working on very diligently for several months. These things don't always go as quickly as our residents would like to see, because we've got to get community buy-in and buy-in from our county and state partners to make these types of programs work.
I feel like the homeless problem originated back in the 70s when we got rid of the mental health facilities, because they just moved them out into but by the same token, out and out drug use in front of children shouldn't be tolerated. I'm not saying, to persecute them, but there are levels that, and so I was literally confused about whether we were allowed by law to do something about it or whether we just had to tolerate it.
So just lastly, on that final point, there are still acts that are considered criminal. So drug use, possession of paraphernalia, drug sales, those types of things are still arrestable offenses that our law enforcement can enforce. But the pure act of being homeless or sleeping in public is not a crime.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Ken Long.
Hello, my name is Ken Long and I reside here in Lincoln. And I just wanted to publicly thank the city council, Sean, Christina, Shanti, Ed from Congressman Kylie's office, and all the residents of Lincoln for getting involved in this Titan missile. The city's always been very approachable and helpful in that. And I just wanted to acknowledge that. So thank you.
Appreciate that. Okay.
Chair Carlskin, this is Shanti. I just had a quick comment, if I may, since someone asked if anyone from the county was here. Is it okay if I just take 2 seconds?
Sure.
I was just going to let you know, I do not know the answer to your question about disclosures and what power we have at the county for those types of disclosures, but I am going to look into it because this is new information for me. So we will definitely look into that and find the answer. And I'm not sure the best method to get that message out, but I'll reach out to Chair Carlskin and at least provide it to him, and then we'll make sure it's disseminated, at least in my neck of the woods. So that's all I had to say.
I will close public comment. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Is there any council member that wants to pull an item? Anyone in the public want to pull an item? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion.
A second.
A motion and a second.
Yes, Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
and Mayor Pro Tem Carlskin.
Yeah. Next item is public hearings. We don't have any public hearings. We do have one item of general business. Item 10A, Adopt resolution 2023-066. Rescinding resolution 2013-099. AR accounts receivable write-off policy and approving an updated policy, receivables policy.
Good evening, Nita Racker, Finance Director for the city. And I feel like this is a hard act to follow, so I'll keep this brief. Before you is the amended accounts receivable write-off policy. The policy that we're rescinding and amending is from 2013. Even though there's a great deal of red markup, there's not a lot of substantive change to the policy. More specifically, we changed the reporting structure to allow some additional minor receivable write-offs within house, but we are keeping the spirit of the policy, continuing to report to council once annually of write-offs. This follows the write-off that was just approved on the consent agenda. We're cleaning up the write-offs. We now have our regular process. We're back to regular collections and write-offs to ensure that we are safeguarding the city's assets in the most appropriate way.
Does anyone on the council have any questions about this policy? Does anyone in the audience?
Mayor and Councilor Richard Pearl, City Treasurer and Chair of the Fiscal Investment Oversight Committee. This policy change was brought before us 2 weeks ago. We went through it in detail. We certainly wholeheartedly endorsed it. So I think that's just a slam dunk. But I also just want to thank Nita and her staff and the city manager for the heroic work, I want to say, in cleaning up the policies and procedures to bring them to the point that they are right now. There's still additional policies and procedures that have to be worked on, but I'm going to assume that the changes are going to be as good as the ones that have come already. And so thank you very much, Nita, and thank you, staff.
Seeing no questions or comments, I'll open it to public comment. Does anyone have any comments on the accounts receivable policy? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council. No further discussion. I'll accept
I move. I second.
Thank
a
you.
motion and a second.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
and Mayor Pro Tem Carlskent.
City manager reports.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor Carlskent. I want to take just a minute tonight to recognize two individuals who recently, one who retired today and one who retired a couple weeks ago. A couple weeks ago was Jeff Miller, who was our water supervisor, and today was Chuck Poole, who has worked for the city for 32 years. And he's our maintenance services manager he's essentially our guru for water and sewer within the city. And he was, we did a little quick retirement lunch for him, just a few people today. And we were asking him about his first few years here. And he told us that it was about 6,500 people in Lincoln at the time. And he was reading meters by hand, home to home. And then sometimes he'd get pulled off to go drive a garbage truck around town to pick up people's garbage. So a lot's changed over his 32 years here. And both gentlemen, and today in particular, Chuck, really can't say enough about the quality of their service to the community. And one of the reasons Lincoln is a nice place to live is that you happen to have some staff that have stuck it out here over decades. And so I hope he's not watching tonight, but in the event that he puts it on YouTube sometime in the future, we appreciate you, Chuck, and we hope you the best in retirement. A couple other quick things. Along with Councilmember Lauritsen, I was fortunate enough with Christine to sit through a couple of meetings, one with the Water Board, another follow-up one with Placer County.
specifically about the Titan site, and received a lot of really good information on the water board side, who deal with a separate side of the regulation of this property. And one thing I took away from the meeting from the significant authorities at the water board is what we heard from the Army Corps tonight, which is that at this time they don't view any immediate health risks to the community. And I think that's just really important information to, when you're hearing it from regulatory authorities, to make sure that that is getting through to folks that are concerned about this. Not to say that it's not worth continuing to advocate for the cleanup, but it's important, I think, that when we're able to get authorities to participate in our public meetings, that we sift through a lot of the detail into sort of the key questions. So more on that, I suppose, in May. Nita and I are probably 85% of the way through the budget now, and so we'll be presenting in May. And we have a very long list of interesting projects coming up that I think that the council and community are pretty excited about. I'm not ready to disclose all of the information yet, but Don, who's here from Gateway Commons, Christine and I have been talking with Public Works about an idea we have to provide some relief specifically to that area as it relates to being kind of a thoroughfare for our homeless individuals that have created some nuisance issues. And so I'm hoping next meeting, if we can pull it together, we have a project that we think would help that. And so if you want to know more about it, catch me after the meeting, but we're still working on finalizing some price, but we're getting there. Two last quick things. The gentleman that brought up this concern as it relates to Lincoln changing some sort of permitting requirement with the state water board as related to our discharge. I'm not aware of any request of that kind. And before, when we still had ownership over the plan, I would have signed that. I don't recall signing it. And I'm not aware that the new JPA that runs that facility has submitted for any report of waste discharge changes. So
I do know that the permit is up for review and renewal.
Yep.
Because of the change.
Right. But the change, right, but the change in any sort of chemistry or temperature is not a request that the city of Lincoln has made, to be clear. And finally, just want to plug the airport committee really quickly. It's been reformed. We just had our second meeting, really good conversation. We're talking about leasing. We're talking about detail as it relates to commercial versus general aviation, economic development, operations. And I think that provided that we can keep everybody engaged, there's going to be some interesting and exciting changes out there. That's all I got tonight. Thanks.
Any council initiated business? Does anyone? That 13 is information items.
Anyway, I want to thank everyone for the presentation. It was a good presentation. I had wanted to ask some questions. However, the public asked all the questions. As the councilman that represents the district where this Sun City and where this Titan site is, I think it's very important as a point of disclosure. I'm also on the committee that's looking at this. I do have one comment to make. The Army Corps of Engineers saying that the plume is stable and hasn't grown. Can we at least admit it's spreading? Yeah. Because I'm looking at the map and it certainly looks like it's spreading. So anyway, that's just my comment for tonight.
I was just gonna say that as far as information goes, I was able to sit down with Sean and Christine, going over some information about the homeless stuff that they're working on. And I'm excited to hear what they are bringing forward. And so I also plan to continue to engage with meeting down at the creek and being involved with that part of the city.
I have no information items. Keep it close to my chest. And so I will adjourn the meeting.